I'm still, after all the fights you've had, in awe of the fact that you do what you do. It's mind-blowing to me.
Thank you, man. Yeah. I mean, it's not that hard to get your beat, but it was a great experience. Like, I learned a lot in there. I can't really talk.
When this fight was first announced, you had said something to the effect of this would end Jake Paul's career. After what you saw tonight, do you think that Jake should continue to box, or what do you think the future holds for him?
Yeah, no, I really take my hat off. I mean, we have to see if it is a broken jaw. Those injuries are very difficult to come back from. But as AJ said, like that last shot would have knocked out a lot of heavyweights.
So here's the bombshell that's got everyone in combat sports completely losing their minds right now. Jake Paul, that 28-year-old internet sensation who transformed into a legitimate boxer, has apparently called it quits on his entire boxing career. This announcement comes directly after what can only be called a career-ending knockout at the hands of Anthony Joshua down in Miami. We're talking about a 6th-round finish that was absolutely vicious. Paul didn't just take a loss here. He walked away with his jaw broken in 2 places and needed emergency surgery immediately. Picture this for a moment. Here's a guy who built himself up as this crossover phenomenon, someone proving he belonged in professional boxing and wasn't just some content creator messing around. Then Joshua's crushing right hand connects, the fight ends in devastating fashion, and now everyone's wondering if we just witnessed the final chapter of Jake Paul's boxing story. What makes this even more interesting is that Paul actually won a couple rounds on at least one scorecard before everything collapsed, proving he was holding his own until that knockout punch changed his life forever.
And then I got dropped. But yeah, I was doing good. I just think my cardio, just the mental pressure of the big guy and sparring the big people is different than the 10-ounce gloves. So I was feeling his power a lot more. But it was a great experience. Like, I learned a lot in there. I can't really
Are you in pain?
Yeah, but
Does it hurt?
It's not from like talking.
Talk to me about what your jaw feels like, because you got
It's like a baseball in there.
two
then
plates?
It just feels like
4 titanium plates.
4 titanium plates. How many do you have?
Just 1.
But wait, because this story gets way more intense and honestly pretty scary from a medical standpoint. There's footage going around where someone mentions something about a titanium rod in a hand, which just makes this whole mess even more confusing. What we know for certain, though, is genuinely alarming. Jake Paul has reportedly told people close to him that he's completely burned out and mentally finished with absorbing the kind of brutal damage that comes with elite-level boxing, and he's seriously thinking about walking away from the sport forever. This decision apparently came together after that Savage knockout we just discussed, and Savage doesn't even begin to cover it. This wasn't just a defeat, it was a systematic beating. Paul hit the canvas multiple times during the fight, and every time he stood back up, you could watch him deteriorating right before your eyes. Then that final crushing blow landed and left him with that double jaw fracture, requiring immediate surgery and sparking all this retirement talk. The level of punishment he took from someone like Anthony Joshua, who's been demolishing heavyweights at the championship level for years, has apparently forced Paul to seriously question whether this career path makes any sense anymore. Can anyone really blame him for having second thought? There's even audio floating around where someone clearly says they're done with boxing, which has everyone convinced this retirement announcement is legitimate.
Hit in the fucking face every single day while I could be playing soccer in Saudi. I'm friends with the Saudis slash football.
Back in the day?
I was on the A team in 7th grade. I have a really good kick. I can run fast, and I'll knock out everyone that fucks with us.
Now here's where someone supposedly said, "Give me $1 billion and I'll prove this message," which honestly sounds completely insane. But let's focus on what the people behind this fight are saying, because their reactions show you exactly how serious this situation has become. Eddie Hearn, who promoted this fight and never holds back his opinions, stuck by his pre-fight prediction about what this bout could do to Jake Paul's career. But after watching it actually happen, his tone became much more somber and thoughtful when discussing his earlier comment about this fight potentially destroying Jake Paul's boxing future. Hearn admitted that the brutal outcome unfortunately validated his concerns exactly. He wasn't celebrating being correct about his prediction. Instead, he seemed genuinely worried worried, breaking down how injuries like broken jaws, especially double fractures needing surgical reconstruction with metal hardware, aren't just agonizing in the moment, they're incredibly challenging to bounce back from both mentally and physically, especially for someone still trying to prove themselves at the professional level of boxing. He pointed out that recovery means much more than just bone healing. It's all that time away from sparring, which ruins your timing, dulls your reflexes, and destroys your rhythm inside the ring. Plus, there's the mental aspect, that constant fear of getting hurt again every time a punch comes toward your face, which can completely and permanently change how a fighter approaches combat, and their willingness to exchange punches up close. Even though Hearn gave Jake credit for his heart and his willingness to face legitimate competition, something many doubters said would never happen, Hearn emphasized that boxing is a merciless sport that doesn't care about your internet fame or your money. Moments like this knockout, these defining injuries that force fighters to confront their mortality, often make people step back and seriously evaluate whether the physical danger and lasting health problems are worth whatever fame or fortune might come from continuing to fight.
Look, that guy did great for someone who's been boxing for like less than a decade. He has had no real professional opponents other than Tommy Fury that were legitimate world-class boxers.
I don't even remember what happened in the Tommy.
He lost a close decision, but it was a good fight. It was a good fight, though. He's a good boxer. If he wasn't a YouTuber, people would be way more impressed with him.
Yeah.
The problem is he was like a famous kid, and then no one took him seriously.
Yeah.
But
oh, and then he started too with like more spectacle-ish fights. People were like, "Oh, this is you." He fought, you know, Nate Robinson, like a basketball player.
But the thing is, he knocked Nate Robinson.
He knocked him
dead,
the fuck out.
And
yeah.
it's
The approach he took that I was trying to explain to people, like, hold up, Joe Rogan, who's been calling combat sports for decades and has witnessed basically everything that can happen to a fighter, delivered perhaps the most sobering and warning-filled response of anyone after Jake Paul got knocked unconscious by Anthony Joshua and sustained that double jaw fracture we've been discussing. Rogan, talking on his show with that characteristic blend of real concern and brutal honesty, encouraged Paul to think deeply and carefully about what continuing his boxing career at this level could cost him long-term. When Joe Rogan warns you about brain damage, that's probably advice worth taking, since this man has observed countless fighters get destroyed by combat sports over the years. Rogan stressed that the beating Paul endured in that fight, particularly those thunderous blows from an experienced heavyweight like Anthony Joshua who's been competing at the championship level for years, creates dangers that extend far beyond the visible damage we can see, like that broken jaw. He was talking about neurological and physical costs that build up over years and simply aren't worth it for someone who has alternative paths to success and wealth. Rogan discussed the long-term health problems that many fighters deal with after hanging up their glove. Things like chronic brain trauma, memory loss, emotional instability, all the conditions we're discovering more about as brain injury research progresses. He characterized the specific knockout shot that Paul absorbed from Joshua as carrying the impact of, and here's his exact words, like 10 punches compressed into one devastating blow, which is absolutely terrifying when you think about what that does to your brain bouncing around inside your skull. Rogan explained how rapidly serious damage can build up in the ring, especially at heavyweight where the power exists on a completely different plane than smaller weight divisions. His point wasn't just about this particular fighter or this specific injury. It was a general warning that continuously absorbing punishment at this elite level, particularly from top-tier heavyweights, can create lasting and possibly irreversible damage to your brain function and life quality, and that Paul should very carefully weigh whether staying on this path makes sense when he has so many other opportunities for success waiting for him.
That I'm a cokehead. My rebuttal to that was, I'll tell you what, you can test me randomly for the next 5 years if I can test you randomly for performance enhancing the next 2 years, and I never got a response on that.
This is why Jake Paul is on PEDs. Within this past year, Jake Paul has literally hit a second puberty and aged like 10 years. Furthermore, he has acne and his hairline is receding like crazy. And people like Jake Paul are going to the best skin doctors in the world and probably are taking hair loss products that aren't even approved for the rest of us. Now, I'm not saying that Jake Paul necessarily took a steroid to make him look bigger,
but he's absolutely using something that helps him bounce back quicker so he can train harder and improve his boxing skills faster. Now here's something that sounds completely insane and has everyone confused, trying to figure out if he's being serious or just stirring up controversy like he always does. That was impressive, by the way, talking about something from the fight that people noticed. But get this, Paul has also allegedly claimed, based on rumors spreading online and through various unofficial sources, that he's thinking about using steroids as a way to shut down the persistent accusations that have been haunting him. The allegations that he's already been using performance-enhancing substances throughout his entire boxing journey. Based on the online speculation and these unconfirmed reports we're seeing, Paul supposedly suggested that by actually demonstrating the clear difference between his natural body and what he'd look like enhanced, that would somehow prove his previous physique and performances were accomplished naturally without any chemical help. People are saying this claim sounds completely reckless and provocative, the type of statement that could get him in major trouble with boxing authorities and potentially create legal problems for him. At the same time, his fans think Paul is just fighting back in his typical aggressive style against years of rumors, speculation, and direct accusations about his physical transformation and the power he displayed in his earlier boxing performances. Considering that boxing has incredibly strict anti-doping policies and procedures, and considering the severe penalties connected to performance-enhancing drug violations in the sport, including bans, financial penalties, and having your results thrown out, most people remain highly doubtful about whether Paul would actually go through with this supposed plan. Others are warning against believing the claim entirely, thinking it might just be Paul creating drama like he's built his whole brand around doing, unless Paul personally confirms the story on record, sits down and clarifies exactly what he meant and whether he's actually serious. The statement stays completely unproven and just creates another layer of drama and confusion to what's already been an incredibly chaotic period in his boxing career. It makes it that I snore, which honestly makes no sense whatsoever, but somehow matches the bewilderment of this entire situation.
The people need to respect him. I don't say that only because I'm fight here in a company, but it's because Jake, the people need to respect Jake, you know. I mean, every single fight go inside the ring, everybody need respect.
Let's break down exactly what went down in that ring, because the specifics are genuinely disturbing when you hear the full story. Anthony Joshua completely shattered Jake Paul's jaw during their heavyweight clash in Miami, and we're talking about one specific moment, one particular punch that transformed everything. It occurred when Joshua's absolutely crushing right hand, the same weapon that's finished countless opponents throughout his championship run, connected perfectly in the 6th round with the kind of accuracy and force that only elite heavyweights possess. The shot caused an immediate knockdown. Paul collapsed to the canvas and eventually resulted in the knockout finish that concluded the fight, but the destruction from that Joshua punch extended far beyond just the knockdown itself. The impact broke Paul's jaw in 2 different spots, creating what medical professionals call a double fracture, which is a serious and extremely agonizing injury that was instantly obvious to anyone watching once the fight was over. You could tell something was drastically wrong with Paul's face. The damage was later verified by Paul's own social media update, where he actually displayed the injury, the swelling, the misalignment, all of it clearly visible and honestly hard to watch. Once the fight was finished and the medical staff examined him, Paul was rushed straight to a Miami hospital, where surgeons performed what sounds like pretty complex surgery to fix the double fracture. The operation required installing 2 titanium plates, one on each side of his jaw to stabilize the broken bones during healing. And here's the detail that really shows how severe this was. They had to extract multiple teeth during the surgical procedure, several teeth completely gone, all from that single punch. Paul shared an update from his hospital room, explaining the surgery went well according to his doctors, and that he'd be restricted to a liquid diet for at least a week, maybe longer depending on his recovery progress, while he heals from having his jaw literally rebuilt with metal implant covers.
Don't ever give a monkeys about what anyone says, because they sit at home, they're full of negativity. It's like the people that are negative towards someone like Jake Paul. Look at what he's done with his life. Do you know what I mean? So yes, it took AJ a couple of rounds to get hold of him, and then he knocked him spark out and broke his jaw. It was a frustrating 2-3 rounds maybe, because Jake was moving so much, holding, but did well, I thought. I mean, I was impressed with him. I mean, I was more impressed with his toughness, because I think that last shot would have knocked out most heavyweights. I mean, you've got to respect him, because he did what many people wouldn't do, which was get in the ring with him. And, you know, he didn't, I know he run and hold, but he also let his hands go at times. And he was in the firing line, and, you know, we got 6 good rounds in the end of actual work.
Is that how you see it in the end?
Yeah, I actually think it's a positive, because, you know, we could have gone in there and got it all over with 45 seconds. He's done an 8-week camp, and now he's done 6 rounds. He's got something to go back on, work on with a team. and onwards and upwards for a big 2026.
Now, considering all the rumors and conspiracy theories that always seem to surround Jake Paul's boxing fights, let's tackle the obvious question that people keep raising online. The vicious 6th-round knockout of Jake Paul by Anthony Joshua proved definitively, without any question, that the fight was completely legitimate and absolutely not staged or predetermined in any way, regardless of what many doubters and skeptics had been theorizing online before the fight took place. Promoter Eddie Hearn, who's been around boxing long enough to recognize when something seems suspicious, directly and emphatically dismissed all the suggestions that the contest was fake or arranged beforehand. He emphasized in several post-fight interviews that this was a fully licensed professional boxing match with real consequences at stake, overseen by official boxing commissions who have strict regulations about these matters and connected to legal gambling markets worldwide, which would make any staged or fixed outcome not just unethical but actually criminal and completely impossible to orchestrate without countless people being involved in the conspiracy. Consider the complexity of trying to rig a fight like this with so many regulatory agencies, cameras, officials, and betting operations watching. It simply couldn't happen. Hearn also referenced what he considered the most obvious proof that this was totally real: the extent of Paul's double jaw break, which was a legitimate injury requiring immediate surgical treatment with titanium hardware and tooth extraction. As Hearn stated directly, you absolutely don't fake that type of damage in an actual fight. There's no possibility Paul would consent to having his jaw fractured in 2 places and undergo surgery just to support some conspiracy theory about the fight being rigged. The medical documentation, the surgery, the rehabilitation period, all of it demonstrates beyond any reasonable doubt that what we witnessed in that ring was 2 professional boxers competing at the elite level, and one of them sustained a devastating and completely real knockout that ended his evening and potentially his entire career.